Never joke, never joke, never joke. Oh, money, never money, never money, money, I know what you conniving. Money, money, never money, never money, money, never money, money, you can keep your conniving money. When you've been a corrupt in a bill, tell me money. Now because your money done, you come with conniving money. When you had your pocket full, in a bill, tell me money. Now because your money done, you hustle for tell me money. Yes, money, never money, never money, money, never money, money, now know what you conniving money. Neighbor joker, neighbor joker, neighbor joker. That's all the money that me walk for. A 2 pound note and a guilder piece. A 2 pound note and a guilder piece. A 2 pound note and a guilder piece. This is all the money that me walk for. I said money, neighbor, money, neighbor, money, money, neighbor, money, money. Now I don't want you conniving money. Oh, Joseph.
Well, I invoke the WPA's position that we are engaging in civil disobedience and non-cooperation with the government, and on that grounds I refuse to participate in the interview. The question in struggle, is not personal. Whatever sacrifice as a political activist or a political leader you have to make for your people, you have to make it.
Guyana and Guyanese, at home and abroad. Tune in to Guyanese Morning Time, hosted by Kadaki Amsterdam, where the sun always shines. Guyanese Morning Time, the people call it Guyanese Morning Time. Rhythm, Guyanese Morning Time. Intelligence and knowledge run the front line. We go again, Guyanese Morning Time. The people call it Guyanese Morning Time. Rhythm, Guyanese Morning Time. Intelligence and knowledge run the front line. We go again. We rise up early morning watching Kams Tv, where wisdom and knowledge, yes, it is the key. Exposing corruptions over land and sea, where the wicked politicians, they try to trick me. Guyana is a land for everybody. With 6 races should live in harmony. Is one set of people getting aisle money. Is one set of people doing the thievery. Beep, Guyanese Morning Time. The people calling Guyanese Morning Time. Rhythm, Guyanese Morning Time. Intelligence and knowledge run the front line. We go again, Guyanese Morning Time. The people calling Guyanese Morning Time. Rhythm, Guyanese Morning Time. Intelligence and knowledge run the front line. We go again. This is a program that you all can see, sharing your views and your integrity. Like it, comment and share it all around. Pass it to your neighbor, safe and sound. A sad situation going on in this town. The voice of the people is getting trampled down. Out of the mouths of babes and sucklings, with Jah as ordained me to sing. I sing Guyanese Morning Time. The people calling Guyanese Morning Time. Rhythm, Guyanese Morning Time. Intelligence and knowledge run the front line. We go again, Guyanese Morning Time. The people calling Guyanese Morning Time. Rhythm, Guyanese Morning Time. Intelligence and knowledge run the front line. We go again, fooling the people. You promoting evil. Stop lying to the people. You are a part of the cycle. Stop fooling people. You're promoting evil. Stop stop lying to the people. Politicians, you are a part of the cycle. I say, Guyanese morning time. The people calling Guyanese morning time. Rhythm, Guyanese morning time. Intelligence and knowledge run the front line. We go again, Guyanese morning time. The people calling Guyanese morning time. Rhythm, Guyanese morning time. Intelligence and knowledge run the front line. We go again. They got Breakford, Bork and Mark Benchcop. David Hines and Kadaki Amsterdam. Sherrod Duncan, Nigel London. Normal Brown and Gavin Matthews. Big up Paslow Port People Governor. Simona Brooms, Robin Simpson. Hampton Green and Winston Jordan. And yes, we can go right on and on. Guyanese morning time. The people calling Guyanese morning time. Rhythm, Guyanese morning time. Intelligence and knowledge run the front line. We go again, Guyanese morning time. The people calling Guyanese morning time. Rhythm, Guyanese morning time. Intelligence and knowledge run the front line. We go again.
The relatives and friends of young Quindon Bacchus, they deserve justice. The family, the relatives and friends of our in Boston, they deserve justice. The family, the relatives and friends of Peter Headley, they deserve justice.
And so when we say that Guyana is an apartheid state, we have the evidence to show.
Piper.
And then I got the next one, Stand Higher from Linden. And Corby. Yes, Sonny. Of course. Gypsy Man is the best man in the world.
Yes.
Yes, Sonny.
Yes.
Right.
Those are the issues I want us to analyze, and those are the things I want for you and the likes to respond to. Morning, neighbor. Morning. Are you morning? Are you morning? Welcome to another program of Guyanese Morning Time. It is 7 hours 31. 29 minutes to the 8 o'clock hour. Those 8 o'clock workers should be close to work by now, right? You know, there's a saying we have, I learned in Kiswahili. You know what's Kiswahili? Kiswahili is one of the African, one of the languages on the motherland. Kiswahili. Some people just call it Swahili. Kwenda pole pole. Kwenda pole pole. Go slowly, go safely. And then here in Ghana we got something that says, Unaga foot go before. Unaga foot go before. It simply means if you're slow, leave early. If you are slow, leave early. And so if you expect the rush hour traffic is going to be crazy as it is in the mornings, leave early. Thank you, Marilyn. Some days I just feel like dress up. I don't ever dress up steady. But clad does make anything look good, eh? Yeah, be careful how you like will look good in clad. Culture and I wrap up in clad is look good. That's why a lot of your politicians use the most expensive suits and so, you know. Right? Because clad does make anything look good. Anyway, that's an aside. Yeah. Unaga foot go before. If you expect the rush hour traffic is going to be mad, then leave earlier. You must know your travel time from, let's say, Buxton to Georgetown on specific hours of the day. And so plan with that in mind. In that case, you don't have to be rushing down the road. You don't have to find yourself in a fender bender. You don't have to be another road casualty. Or you don't have to create another road casualty. Right? I see the slogan now is respect the road. I don't want to respect no road. Roads don't die. People die. So respect life. Respect life. Put back all the C's in driving. Hey, Guyanese, throw away all them C. I don't know which one. The only C they must got in the 5 C's. They throw away all the 5 and they create their own one. Carry on. Carry on at your best, right? So let's take stock of our driving. Let's take stock of our commuting time and plan according to that time, and so that we don't have to be rushing, because we might kill somebody along the way, and that can be the intent. Good? So don't respect the road. Respect lives. Remember care, caution, consideration. Right? What's the other two? I can't remember. But I think once I get them treated, I could. Care, caution, consideration. Right? Good. Y'all put back the C's, man. Y'all just throwing them out. How have you been? How was your yesterday? Make some money last night? I hope you did. That sounds bad. I hope you been. Well, Larry, that sounds bad. I hope you made some money yesterday. If you're a night worker, I hope you made some money last night too. Or if you're utilizing your after work time, after you don't give the government your 9 to 5, if you're utilizing that personal time to do business, I hope you made some money. At the end of the day, I hope you made some money legally, ethically, right? You know, sometimes you say things and then when you reflect on them, you ask yourself, what really are you saying? Right? Thanks, Leslie Williams. She said courtesy and common sense. Right? But common sense is too common, you know. So that's why I get so much problem on the road. You expect people to get common sense, but they ain't got. I'm driving straight down the Church of God Road this morning. An adult driver is facing me. I'm sure he saw me approaching. And the man reversed across the road. He's one of them drivers that are going to tell you reverse back. You ain't got common sense. What do? Cross up and go on like you didn't go to create road rage? I had a good smile for the morning. I say, you know, I got a lot of mad people on this road. Always remember that. Keep that in mind. God, stop talking about you making some money. You earning your keeps, you getting by. Good? Legitimately. Whatever you see as legitimate business, so long as it doesn't put you in harm's way, excuse me, or in the hands of the police, I encourage you. Give it your best shot. Right? Alan, thank you, sir. Good? Yes, I promised yesterday I was going to address that voice note. Putting all the MPs, I think the notice said MPs on notice that if they don't want to work for the people, they must vacate the seat and so on and so forth. And attacking, well, don't let me say attacking. Calling out Royce Ford for saying that Congress must be held and he wants Congress to be held, and so on and so forth. Sometimes we deal with issues too emotionally. Sometimes we deal with issues too emotionally. And that is why I always say, don't allow other people to control your emotions. You must control your own emotions. Right? Sometimes we have to take a step back, think, put everything in context, and then speak. As we used to say, I was told while growing up, put your brain in gear before your mouth in action. Right? Shazim, we're going to talk about it just now. I got presidential hopefuls intentions. What's wrong with you? Yeah, we put things in perspective, take a step back, and then respond. Disclaimer. I did not hear what Royce Ford said on the interview with Mark Benshaw. I didn't hear. I didn't listen. A lot of you might be surprised at the fact that I don't listen to a lot of things. And it is not that I despise anybody or anything, but I choose not to listen to a lot of things so that I can maintain my sanity and my objectivity. Good? I don't like go by what somebody say. Somebody else's opinion. I like to form my own. And that is why you can always find me outside of the box, or most of the times I'm outside of the box. Sometimes I am crude because I choose to be crude, because that is outside of the box, and that will get the job done. So let me be a little crude according to responding to this voice note. What double standard? What double standard? And that's ambiguous. What double standard? So let me put it in context. It is double standard for the voice noter to be calling on GCOM for free, fair, and credible elections, for timely elections, GCOM / the government, for timely elections, for free, fair, and credible elections, for the democratic process to function. It is double standard for us to do that. Because when it comes to our party structure, we don't want that done. You recognize what I'm saying? You recognize what I'm saying? That's double standard. We can't be calling on national government and national structures to do what is right in our eyes in the democratic process. But when it comes to our political institutions and other institutions, quite frankly, we don't want that same democratic process to have its way. So it's double standard. For us who are calling for it nationally, for the voice note who I know is calling for it nationally, for Royce Ford, for Aubrey Norton, it's double standard for a whole lot of us. But I'm going to point out another example of double standard in this situation. Like I said, I don't know what Royce said. But for my own meanderings over the years, I have my own understanding of the situation. A lot of us like to jump ahead of things. And I'm saying this, it will be double standard of Aubrey Norton. If he doesn't hold Congress when it is due, because he fought tooth and nail to get Granger to hold Congress when it was due. All kinds of excuses were made, COVID and so on and so forth, and Aubrey Norton fought tooth and nail
until eventually Congress was held and he was elected. So for him not to do the same thing that he was fighting tooth and nail for Granger to do is double standard. The question is this: did anybody here or be make a declaration as to whether or not Congress is going to be held when it is due? It's a question I'm asking. I haven't heard the answer. I have not heard. I personally have not heard. Did anybody here, if you have heard or been on saying that Congress is not going to be held when it is due, then by all means call him out. Call him out. Because democracy must function, must work. And if he stood for democratic principles and norms when Granger was leader of the party, he must stand for it now that he is leader of the party. And so Roysdale is making an allegation that he's not going to hold Congress because he has made this declaration. And Roysdale is insisting that Congress be held. I stand with Roysdale. Congress should be held when it is due. It's democracy we're talking about. And if you can't respect the democratic processes in your political party, what guarantees do we have that you're going to respect it in national government? And so it's an opportunity to show that you believe in democracy and you will respect the right of every individual, every player in the democratic process. So like I'm saying, if we heard that declaration that I ain't going to be holding no Congress. In fact, I might even change the constitution and say no Congress should be held while I'm alive. Then by all means confront it. But if you haven't heard that declaration or you have no evidence to say, well, this man is not going to hold Congress, take many seats. Relax. Chill out. And those who heard this interview and getting anxious, step back. Analyze this situation, put it in context, and save your energy if it is making sense. But here's another angle I want you to look at. If Aubrey Norton were to make a declaration today that Congress will not be held when it is due, don't jump into a frenzy. Don't get anxious. Listen to the reasons, Prof. Ford. Like I said, I like to be outside the box. Listen to the reasons, Prof. Ford. And then ask yourself, are these credible reasons? Is he right? Is this the current situation? Can we get it changed in time for Congress? I'm encouraging you to do that. Because I can tell you all something. A board tell me that the PNC broke. A board told me that the PNC is broke. They ain't got no money. And Congress is a big money thing. And so if you ain't got money, how you hosting Congress? And so let's talk about some double standard. If Roysdale Ford knows who is responsible for the PNC being broke, and he's staying quiet and calling for Congress to be held without money, that's the double standard. He should call out and call those people who are allegedly responsible for the PNC going broke. So everybody has roles and responsibilities. Everybody has right. Everybody has right to partake in the democratic process. We also have responsibilities to hold our leaders accountable. Is it true that there's a so big a question that there's so many answers to. Is it true that there has been mutiny in the PNC? And so the people who had a direct line to those who control the string purse or the purse strings of the PNC have told them to disconnect the string? So there's no money for Harvey Norton to do what he is supposed to do as party leader? So if you tell the people, hold back the money, don't give them no money, how are you going to ask them to hold Congress? I'm just asking. I'm just asking those questions. Remember, I will always remind you, because I ain't waiting for nobody to tell me. I'm not PNC. But I'm a Guyanese, of Afro descent especially. And the PNC is the biggest political party which claims to represent us. So I got to comment on the politics. So all I'm doing this morning is encouraging you to examine this thing from all angles. Did Arby say he will or will not hold Congress? No, I've not heard any declarations. If he is to declare he is not going to hold Congress, there must be a reason. What are the reasons? Are the reasons legit? Can they hold water, as we say? If they can hold water, then by all means. But if they can't hold water, then by all means too, ensure itself. Right? Like I say, I heard there's a mutiny. And I said it months ago or weeks ago on this program. We African Guyanese, black people, outsource to fund our politics. The Working People's Alliance right now, WPA, is asking for your financial contributions, human contribution, human capital contribution, vehicular contributions, all kinds of contributions towards its campaign fund. I'm repeating that call. The Working People's Alliance needs your assistance to wage its campaign. I've been asking for commitments. I can tell you I have not received 10 commitments via my WhatsApp recently. Dr. Hines says the party is looking for 200 regular committed donors, monthly donors. I'm not sure we have 20 as yet. 1/10. Right? But back to the issue at hand. We as a people, we have to understand that unless we are funding our politics, we will always be second. We'll always be the runner-up. We'll always be starting later than is required. You need an explanation for that? It's simple. If you have to depend on another man to eat, it's likely that you will eat after the other man. Ask the men in the houses against the man of the house. Right? If you have to depend on somebody else to eat, it's likely you will eat after them. And so let me give you this scenario. Over the years, the PNC has become dependent on large business people in this country for its campaign financing and so on. Who are the large business people in this country currently? For the greater part. Indo-Guyanese. Where's their allegiance? To the PPP. Who is the PNC trying to put out of political power, out of government? The PPP. Will these large businessmen give money to the PNC to get rid of the PPP to whom they have their allegiance? From whom they are receiving unheard of benefits? No. What they can do, or many of them will do, is hedge in their bet. Boy, we don't know what the possibilities are, especially that democracy is for sale. The possibility is that the US going to just show the PPP and put in the PNC. So let us appear to be friends with the PPP, with the PNC. When we give 100 million to the PPP campaign fund, we will give 10 million to the PNC campaign fund. Knowing that 100 million gives the PPP a better chance of winning the elections. And a 10 million lessens the chances of the PNC winning an election. Let me give you another reason for that investment. Because we are their financiers, albeit at a minimal level, we get to call some shots. Who pays the piper calls the tune. And so since we are big businessmen on Regent Street and we giving them a $10 million towards the campaign fund, we get to tell them no protest in the city. Especially no protest down Regent Street. And so protesting down Regent Street will send the strongest possible message to the government and its handlers and its friends and the international community. Then we just took that wind out of their sail. They can't protest down Regent Street because we are dangling our $10 million contribution in front of them. If you come down Regent Street, we can't give you this because it's going to affect our business. But when we crowdfund, when all them little black boys and black girls come and put a $10 in the wheelbarrow, first accumulate it to hundreds of millions to fund our campaign, we in charge. If the big Indian businessmen down Regent Street give, is because they want to be a part of the thing. But we controlling we thing because we got we own money to fund we thing. We have to start to develop that attitude. But a whole lot of us are comfortable sitting back and saying, yeah, they must do this, they must do that. How are they doing it? What are they doing it with? Where are the resources to do it? Yeah, my child must be well fed. When I come in this house, I want a steak. But you ain't providing shrimp money. So if you come and reach steak, you gotta ask yourself who wagging the tail of the dog? Or the dog, who running things in this house? Because I ain't provide steak money, but I eat this steak. I might be the man in the house, but am I the man of the house? There's a difference. There's a stark difference. Understand that? So yeah, Congress must be held. Who funding it? We must protest down Regent Street. We want 10,000 people down Regent Street. Who funding their transportation and other provision of other support systems for the day or days that it will take for such a protest to have an impact? You ever stop and ask yourself why it is the PNC, for example, does not protest every day in the week? Because to protest every day in the week means you have to provide transportation every day of the week for some people. You have to provide refreshment every day of the week for the protesters. You have to pay sometimes your security personnel every day of the week. And so it adds up. And so if we don't have the resources, if they don't have the resources, how can we be calling on them to protest every day of the week, but we ain't putting nothing in the kitty? So I'm summarizing. Why is therefore got a right to call for this democratic process to work? Because if we're calling for it to work nationally, it must also work in our political organizations. But until we hear a declaration from our North, we don't have anything to stand on. Whether or not Congress will be held or not held. And when we hear that declaration, we must listen to the reasons behind the declaration. And assess those reasons and come to an objective conclusion. And then chart the course forward. We must recognize that what we want out of the system, we're going to get dependent on how much we put in. And if we're depending on other people to fund our political campaign, to remove a government that they are in allegiance with, we're wasting time. We are wasting time. Keep that in mind. It's an inadequacy in our thinking. It's an inadequacy in our actions. We are inadequate as an opposition. There are many reasons for that inadequacy. We can start to address them. I'm sure I've identified a couple. There's inadequacy in leadership all across this country. That is why we have so many problems. It was drawn to my attention the other day. Yesterday, to be exact. Part of the reason, a suspected reason for a lot of bangarang and pote-pote in these ministries is the fact that the permanent secretaries have been moved all around the place of ministries that they have been and had the institutional knowledge of. Why do you think they call it permanent? Permanent secretaries. They're supposed to be tossed all over with the wind. Because you represent the legal, administrative head of the ministry where you're appointed. And by virtue of the fact that you're the legal admin head, and you supervise, you overlook, you manage the day-to-day operations of those ministries, and you've been doing it for years, you become the institutional knowledge of that ministry. And so when you take a permanent secretary that was functioning at the Ministry of Housing for 40 years, and you toss them into the Ministry of Amerindian Affairs, they don't know nothing but indigenous culture or the needs of the indigenous community, etc. The practices, the norms, chaos gonna happen. Likewise, if you take the man from culture, having served culture for 40 years, and you dash into public works, he ain't got a clue of what is required to man that ministry in a competent way. Many will argue that, yeah, as a permanent secretary, it's the same rules governing them. But do you have to have the same expertise to manage people as against infrastructure? Inadequacies. That's why we got so much chaos. You take a square peg and put it in a wrong hole like Priya at the Ministry of Education. Priya never stand in front of blackboard to teach Lily ABC. She never went through the education system. I don't think she has ever been friends with education. All she brings to the ministry is political power. And by sticking her political finger in everything administrative in the Ministry of Education, she's making a mess of it. But she is inadequate. It took her more than 5 years to know that love is a verb or to learn her parts of speech. What other evidence you want? Unless we want changes, we have to be prepared, if we want changes, to do the work, the grunt work. I want changes, and that is why every day I'm here. That is why every opportunity I get, I highlight things. Because I want changes. And so when Rhonda and others, like Rhonda said yesterday, with all that Mr. Amsterdam is doing, they don't seem getting the support and so on. Trust me, I welcome the support. I would love to have more support. But with or without the support, I'll continue to do what I can do. Because I want change. I want a better Guyana. And for as long as I have the breath of life, I will continue to work towards contributing to that change. Would it be easier if more people do it? Certainly yes. Will I stop doing it if others don't join? No. No way, Uzi. With that, let me remind you that there is protest in front of GCOM today. The usual 11:30, 12 time. Go there and support it. Go there and support it. Show that you want changes too. Like Roy Zilford is calling for Congress to be held. Ask Roy Zilford to join the protesters out there and call for a clean voters list and biometrics. Ask Amanza. Ask Coretta, ask all the politicians, all the MPs to go there and join the usual protesters and choose this. And continue to call for the democratic processes to work. It's not only in the party. Democracy in the party is not going to guarantee us democracy in the country. But we want democracy in every institution. That's my position. Now let me answer an important question that was asked this morning. Why don't I run for president? Was that a question? Or if I would like to run for president, which one? I would love to be the president of this country. I think I told you what my manifesto will be. More than 2 years ago, I told you what my first actions will be if I were to be made president of this country. And so that you're going to hear it for the first time if you didn't hear it before, and you're going to be reminded now if you heard it before. The first thing I will do is wipe off the debt of every single Guyanese citizen, every domestic user of electricity and water in this country. Wipe out the debt. Make them start from zero. Because up until now, I'm not convinced that these utility companies have done justice to any citizen in this country. That's a show of goodwill. Citizens, you will pay for utilities, but you will pay for it when it is properly accounted for. When it is properly provided. And so all of them, the utility company got in hundreds of millions of dollars and so on. Whoops. Zero. And so we will sit with the heads of these utility companies and have them fix the system so citizens can have provision of proper services. And then we're going to talk about charge. Because guess what? The citizens' taxes are being used to subsidize the utility companies anyhow, right now. And so let government continue to subsidize them and fix it, bring it to a place where citizens can pay for it and feel comfortable paying for it. First act, whoops, zero. The next thing big on my agenda is constitutional reform to ensure that politicians who prove to be corrupt can go to jail without all the hassle. That would be an incentive for me not to be corrupt because I know the law say I can go to jail, president or not. Those are two big things on my agenda. Free education from nursery to university is right up there because I think Guyana has the resources, especially now, to afford every child, every individual, every citizen a quality education without fear nor favor. We get oil money. I must take into consideration the Clive Thomas and WPA recommendation. At least $5,000 per household. This ain't got nothing to do with race, it ain't got to do with color, it ain't got to do with politics, it ain't got to do with religion, per household. Once you have established a household in this country and you're Guyanese, at least $5 million per household. Or whatever is possible at the time of me being president. Because all of them crooks in government tell you, we can't give every Guyanese household $5 million. But they're not telling you if they can give you 500. Honest politicians, they come far and wide. Every blue moon you might find one. Will say to the people, listen, it's a good recommendation, $5,000 per household. But with the current level of production, we cannot sustain $5,000 per household. We can, however, sustain $500 per household, and we will increase it incrementally as production increases. But these jagabats complain straight and tell you what, we can't pay $5,000 per household, and we will never be able to pay $5,000 per household, so you will get zero. So you want the possibilities of those things that I offer? Let's go. I'm ready to be president. Let's go. I'm ready. The lines are open. 6225933 is the number to call. Let's talk the thing. I understand the pensioners at Kitty got a pension close to 12 or after 12 yesterday. That's when the money arrived. That's another agenda manifesto issue. Agenda issue of mine. Senior citizens must be taken good care of in this country. They have already paid their dues. Why do we treat them like that? Because, well, we didn't think we can get old. Well, with the way things are going, a lot of us may not get old, but we still got to cater for getting old. Because we don't control that. The Creator does. Call A Live, good morning.
Yes, good morning. First, let me always ask, can you hear me clearly?
Yes, caller.
Okay, this is Flash Garden. Good morning to you and all my black brothers and sisters. I will jump right away. I like how you handled that situation with Riding Food and what he said. I see the video from Mark because I don't interest in the mark. And he's right. If my leader had been not insane, when or he refused not to, then we should hold him accountable. But right and forward, my brother, if you're listening to Flash God this morning, stop your nonsense, my brother. Stop your nonsense. Wait a turn. Every man is in a line to receive whatever God has for them. You make a mistake, you get caught by gossiping by your own party. Now you get come back again. And why these things have to be marked? You see, black people in Guyana and America, I beware of marking, you know. Mark into this program, things for money and for destroy our leader. Abinati is our Lord. David Prasad, Granger Prasad was on his program a couple days ago. Why did not ask him them question that? Why Mark did not ask Brave why he see 47 bags with garbage inside and still give up office? Why Mark didn't ask David Green on his show a couple days ago that, look, man, why you destroy the Constitution and bring your own law to please them dirty collie in office? What's wrong with these MPs them fighting down Arby Norton? It's Arby Norton time. Leave him alone. It is so shameful and disgraceful for them. Everybody, and Mark always bringing people on his show. That's why I love this show, because you will not allow us to come and talk nonsense on your show. Mark always bring people for disrespect Arby Norton. Mark don't love Arby Norton. Therefore, if Mark don't love my leader, he don't love me, Flash Garden. So why me must love him? Mark have to stop that nonsense. Stop bringing on people for destroy PNC party. What happened to PNC? Like you remain there. Let Roger Ford take it up. Call a meeting and take it up. But let me say, Granger have his own group MP. Them young MP. Arman Prasad, Dornam Sonila Prasad, all them have them against Abinat. What's wrong with you guys? Let me move on. This word, I love these words. The stone that the builder rejects does become the head cornerstone. You know why I'm saying this morning? Somebody have to stand and turn the page. Flash Garden with a turn the page. WPA become the head cornerstone today in Guyana, where a lot of black people reject them and run over to AFC. Don't cut me off, I ain't finished yet. And look what AFC done to black people in Guyana. AFC. Number one, I could remember 2011 election. After that, Jackson came out as a plane. He called Stratman Judas. Because when Stratman AFC for join with PNC that year, that election time, for knockout Dagdo, we walk away. Number one. Number two, look what AFC done. Sharadas. Look what Sharadas done to black people today in Guyana. Come from AFC. Number three, listen what what the can said. Left for me, left for this pretty man, I would have stayed with coalition, but it's a board. In other words, 95% of AFC board is black. He said today, is a black man then vote for left left the PNC party, the coalition party. You saw all them calling us show black man and black man I realize and get to. WPA would have never stand, never done that. Look at WPA action towards black people today. Look at the program today. As the word of God, David said, Lord, if you wasn't on my side, something like that. If you was not on my side, he never said, man, people that destroy him. And if WPA was not on black people's side today and the countryside today, majority black people that dead and gone, or be more because we run and left Guyana. But because God has keep the best for the last, and he keep WPA, and he keep Abinadun, that make it getting so much fighting down. But to the end, my black brother and sister home there, it is not too late to do the right thing. I'm saying over and over, AFC, a vote for AFC is a vote for PPPC. Run away from AFC. It's a disaster party that. Look the man in the ring. The man in the ring, we understand using it because he get numbers from program. I don't know on the street. And Ramzatan, it would not surprise me, Ramzatan, make him president candidate for AFC, forget black people confused, and or prime minister candidate. But at the end of the day, black people take it from Flash Garden. AFC cannot win PDP by themselves because Indian vote do not bust up. Only black man that bust up their vote. We should focus on two party now and give that two party a chance against WPA and PNC. We got to stop this war. I'm glad when Mr. David break out last night and he's going to talk this week and next week about poverty. We love that. Thank you very much for your time. Have a wonderful day.
The lines remain open. 6225933 is the number to call. You tune to the Guyanese Morning Time. I am your host, the Buxtonian. Call you live. Good morning. Lines remain open. 62259.
Good morning.
Good morning, caller. Your
His Excellency. Hello?
Yes, sir.
Yeah, I'm calling to find out a little away from today's discussion. If you can shed some light, you and the David HINDS and Professor Thomas can shed some light on we as young black professionals buying shares from ExxonMobil. If you can please shed some light on that.
Well, the only light I can shed on that, and I think they might very well tell you the same thing, ExxonMobil is a publicly traded company as far as I know on the U.S. Stock Exchange. I don't know if it's on the Guyana Stock Exchange. You know Guyana has a stock exchange?
Yeah, I'm quite familiar.
Right,
but
so
I'm in the process of... Go ahead.
I would believe anybody who has an interest in buying shares from Exxon would have to check on the stock exchanges. Or through the stock brokers to find out where they're available and the cost and so on, and just go ahead and buy like anybody else.
Okay.
Good.
Yeah, because I'm trying to pursue it, but I need some more knowledge and guidance. So that's why I'm reaching out to the R. Thanks so much.
Yeah, you can also walk into the Guyana Stock Exchange. I remember I walked in there one time and inquired about things that I wanted to know, and they will provide you with guidance.
All right, have a good one.
You're welcome. The lines remain open. 6225933. Anybody here is aware of I think GHK Lal was a Wall Street person. I can't say he was a stock trader, but I think GHK Lal was a Wall Street person, or is. So if anybody here with that kind of knowledge that you would like to share, bring it forth. Right? 6225933 is the number to call. You tune to the Guyanese Morning Time. I have a video to share with you. And I shared because when I looked at it, I say, this is Guyana for you. This is Guyana for you, especially with the bags of money. You might not be seeing it. You may have heard of it, or you're still waiting for the day when we'll be able to walk into some people's homes and pick up bags of cash that they have stolen from the citizens of this country. Look at this one.
And now let's shift our focus to Gabon. The all-new Game of Thrones. One family has been in power for decades and now there's a coup and people within the family seems to be pulling the strings. Let's get you the latest. A day after the coup, the arrests have begun. The new military leaders are going after the ousted president's family, Ali Bongo. The ousted president is still in detention, and now his son, Nuruddin Bongo Valentin, has also been picked up. This footage was released yesterday. Take a look at this. That's not a great look for the young Bongo. And a slight segue here. Why duffel bags stuffed with cash? It's 2023. You'd think they would turn to cryptocurrencies by now, or corrupt politicians incapable of moving away from suitcases full of cash. Of course, the young Bongo denied that it was all loot. Well, his cabinet director tried anyway. Listen to this.
C'est des fonds de campagne.
Et combien?
Je ne sais pas. Je ne sais pas s'ils ont dû compter, je ne sais pas.
Une estimation?
Je saurais vous dire. Je saurais vous dire, c'est des valises. Comme ça, je ne sais pas combien de valises contient, donc je ne peux pas vous dire. Je ne sais pas.
Ça a été retrouvé dans quelle pièce, vous représentez?
Dans le chose, c'était dans le salon. Dans la pièce, au milieu.
Est-ce que vous êtes banque pour justifier? Vous êtes une banque pour justifier ou pas?
Non, non. Enfin, je pense que si je comptais, c'est pas... non.
They claim all that cash was campaign funds. Remember, this is days after the election took place in Gabon. Perhaps they want people to believe that they ran a thrifty campaign. Either way, the excuse has not worked. The young Bongo and his cabinet director have been arrested, as have others who were part of the Ali Bongo regime. Gabon's military leaders say they've seized both money and narcotics. And on the face of it, this seems like a good step by the coup leaders, but Gabon's political opposition has its doubts. We mentioned that an election took place on Saturday. The result was declared on Wednesday, that's 2 days ago. Ali Bongo was declared the winner, and within minutes of that declaration, he was detained. The military says that the election was fraudulent, and that's apparently why they stepped in. That's their excuse. But what about Gabon's political opposition? Ali Bongo's main opponent was this man, Albert Ondo Ossa. He was once an economics professor, but for years he's been part of Gabon's politics, even serving in the cabinet of former President Omar Bongo, Ali Bongo's father. In Saturday's election, he was the main opposition face, and he has his own theories about the situation that is unfolding.
We need to put things into context. First of all, it's not a coup d'etat, it's a palace revolution. General Brice Oligui Nguema is Ali Bongo's cousin. The campaign was 60 years of Bongo is too much. The Bongos found it necessary to put Ali Bongo aside and to effectively continue the Bongo PDG system. They put Oligui Nguema forward. We know who's behind Oligui Nguema. The Bongo system continues.
He believes that the new military president is a puppet, and the one pulling the strings is actually the ousted Ali Bongo's older sister.
Behind Oligui Nguema, there's no need to look. It's Pascaline Bongo who's there. That's all. So Oligui Nguema is an underling. Behind Oligui Nguema is Pascaline Bongo, and the Bongo clan continues in power.
The plot thickens. Pascaline is former President Omar Bongo's eldest child, officially anyway. She has served as foreign minister in her father's cabinet. She was then director of the cabinet till her father died, 2009. After that, when her brother Ali Bongo came to power, she was sidelined, and apparently the two share a frosty relationship. So the opposition leader Ossa believes that she has a hand in the coup. But this may be just a way to delegitimize the incoming military president. Gabon's opposition wants the military to declare Ossa as the winner of the last election.
Nous ne pouvons demander aux Gabonais.
We cannot ask the Gabonese people, who massively elected Professor Albert Ondo Ossa to be President of the Republic, to renounce their choice. This is unacceptable, and the people will not accept it. To understand this, we need to only look at where 14 years of illegitimate mandate has led us. Your courage and patriotism honor our country and our armies. By choosing truth and the ballot box, you are choosing the nation. The nation would be grateful to you.
It seems Ossa is taking the combative approach, and his fellow opposition leaders are trying to sweet-talk the military. Neither seems to be working. General Brice Oligui Nguema is set to be sworn in on Monday. He'll be sworn in as the president of the transition, but he still hasn't given a timeline for the transition back to democracy. Opposition leader Ossa has given a bleak assessment.
The Gabonese people took to the streets to welcome Bongo's departure. But I did say that they saw that it wasn't the Bongos who had left, but a Bongo who had replaced a Bongo. They're going to have to come back to reality.
So the visuals we began with,
You put in a 12-cent meatball, you was on a lice. I going to give you a word of advice. Check your meat out my rice.
You can get meat anywhere, but for the best cuts of chicken, beef, pork, mutton, and lots more, check out T&W Harris Butcher Shop, located in the East Rheinveld Market Meat section. Call us on 609-2049. Ask for Rastaman. T&W Harris Butcher Shop brings you the best in fresh cut meats and lots more. Morning, neighbor. Morning, are you morning? Welcome to another program of Guyanese Morning Time. It is now 7:17. It's a Wednesday. Yes, it's Wednesday the 8th. What am I saying? Wednesday the 6th of September in the year 2023. 70 minutes after the 7 o'clock hour. And I want us to go right across, quite frankly, to the Twin Island media. Dr. Hinds is over there this morning. He's going to spend some time discussing crime. And so I want us to join that discussion. And then, of course, we will come back to our regular programming. So let me see if I can catch up with Dr. Hinds over at Twin Island Media. And we listen to that discourse.
By the way, just for clarity, it was pains getting these statistics from the police. At least for 2023, we have seen an increase over 2022, as well as matter of fact, we've seen an increase over the 2020, 2021, 2022 period. Thus far, we've recorded 90 homicides for the year. Just about, and these were for the first 2 quarters of 2023, 19 homicides, 96 bodily harm crimes, instances of larcenies are up, larcenies 230, malicious damage 157. Across many of the spectrums of crime, but if you look at major crimes, they're trending downwards compared to the last 3 years for the first quarter. For the first quarter, they've been trending down, but the numbers are still relatively high overall.
Oh boy. Is there a sense within the society in St. Kitts that the authorities have a handle or have a solution for this? Or is it just resignation that this is just the way it is? What's happening there? What's the feel you have on the ground there in St. Kitts?
That's a loaded question, Darren, because there's a sense that they know what they want, but there's also a sense that the young people are disregarding calls and plans that are being put in place by the police force. And I could give you a typical example. Just recently, we had the robberies of a supermarket franchise. They hit one around 5-something in the afternoon, and within 45 minutes, they hit another branch. Problem with that is when the entire media apparatus reported on it. The following weekend, 5 young men went and they sought to conduct the same robbery, a similar style of robbery on Nevis on another outlet of the same supermarket. It just highlights that it's difficult to put a lid. They know what they want. They've been explaining their plans to combat the problem, but they're not getting to the grassroots issue of what is causing this uptick in criminal activities.
Dr. David Hinds, similar question to you.
Yes, same thing in Guyana. They're scratching their heads. The police does not know. And in fact, I just pulled up the statistics here for Guyana. There's been an increase of 36.6% in the first half of 2023. So you're talking about 82 murders in the first half of 2023, an average of 13 persons per month. So I said 4 per week in Guyana. It's 13 per month. So it's 4 point something per week. And last year it was 60 murders for the first half of 2022. And so it's gone up by 36.6% this year. No, there are all kinds of theories that have been put forward. The increase in and the ready availability of guns in the country, that is certainly one of the big issues there. The inability of the police for want of the capacity to deal with the level of crime that's there, but also corruption within the police force, and the people feeling they can take the law into their hands because they feel that the police force and the justice system could be bribed. That's another theory that is being put forward. The third theory that is being put forward is the general breakdown of law and order in the country and the rule of law. And this is linked to the politics of the country. So there are all kinds of theories that have been put forward, but the police have not been able to put a handle on these homicides, these murders. In addition to that, there's an extremely high rate of road accidents. I mean, just this past weekend, there were 8 people killed on the roads in Guyana. And it's become almost a national emergency in the country. When you couple the death on the road, murders, and then there's been a high rate of fires in the country, is a lot of tragedy in our country. But the murders, I mean, that stands out. That stands out.
I'm curious. I want to come back to something you said in your previous response, i.e. the general breakdown of law and order and it being linked to the political world or the political realm. Could you expand on that? What's the link between the politics in the country and, because I'm not aware of any specific political upheaval or issue, Dr. Ali seems to have the situation in hand from a political standpoint. Am I reading wrong, or there's something deeper?
Well, what I'm making reference to are accusations of impropriety on the part of government officials. Only recently, a government minister was accused of raping a 15-year-old child. And that story went on for almost a month. Eventually, he got off because the DPP refused to continue to recommend charges against him after enormous pressure on the accused to withdraw her statement and to say that she no longer wants to continue the case against the minister. She was held by the state in quote-unquote custody. And so people see instances like that as the justice system in the country serving one class of people. There are other instances of well-to-do people in the society who would commit who would be accused of committing violent offenses, assault and attempted murder and so on, and getting off. And there's a theory that people in the wider society see that, and so they feel that they can take the law into their own hands and settle disputes in the society by naked violence.
Okay. Jermaine, is that situation mirrored in St. Kitts Nevis? Is there a attitude, or at least a perspective among the populace that, hey, you know, some people get away with it, so therefore, you know, why can't I?
Yes and no. Yes, yes, in the sense that, and it's a trend that we've been seeing. Depending on which administration is in office, you'll see a spike and you'll see a lull in crime. That's across the board, and that's what we in the media realm and the political pundits would tell you, right? And if you look at the statistics for the last year and so, major crimes have been trending downwards, right? The overall criminal activities increase based on the statistics, right? So that suggests that depending on which administration is in office, you've been seeing crime spike, like for example now, right? That's what they would tell you. The issue though is people in general would not necessarily blame an administration because you're not hearing about these white collar crimes, right? It's only now that administration has changed, you're now hearing about these white collar crimes when audits are being done by administrations and so forth. But does it go deeper to say people are using that as an influence to criminal activities? Not necessarily. The data and the trends and some of the research, it's not necessarily showing that. Criminal activities in St. Kitts and Nevis, to an extent, is being driven by one, easy access to guns, which in and of itself continue to be the pervasive issue, and the governments seemingly have not been able to put a handle or a source in terms of where and how these guns are being brought into St. Kitts and Nevis. The second issue, I think, has to do primarily with drugs. When we look at when we in the media when we in the media do our groundwork and get to the backstory or context, we see a lot of the homicides and robberies and so forth. It's being caused by, or the reason behind it is drugs, or somebody there's somebody there's that. So those in general are some of the pervasive issues. From a political perspective, we're not hearing that. What we're hearing, for example, now is people are complaining of poverty because the administration would have put a lid on some of the social programs that were in place. I mean, you tell me you're spending $250 million a year on social programs, and that's just direct social programs benefiting people, right? When the administration came into office and they tightened the screws to investigate some of it, those people who were on the program, for example, the peace, quote unquote, peace program, which they rebranded to call the Elevate program, where according to government, we still don't have the full facts about that program. You're paying gunmen to keep the peace. When these social programs were tightened and investigations were being done, you realize that, hey, I'm not getting any money, so I now need to go out and look. And the easiest thing to do is, criminal activities. So it's these sort of complex issues that for me are some of the underlying causes of it, and not necessarily from the political realm.
All right. No, the question can be asked, Dr. Hinds, is violence a broader part of our culture? Is it a bigger part of certain subcultures in the Caribbean? We just live in a violent society. We live in a violent world. I mean, we see violence every day. We turn on our TV and it's just violence, whether it be Ukraine, the United States, multiple mass shootings, and we can go on.
Yes, there is something that we don't talk about in the Caribbean, because, of course, we don't want to appear to be a place that is out of order because we depend a lot on tourism and so forth. The Caribbean has been a violent place. I mean, slavery was the most violent institution. And we have not sorted out ourselves in the Caribbean since slavery. We rushed from slavery into colonial rule. The violence in the society continued. And we have not, as a larger society, sat down and come to grips with that history of violence and try to put in place particular corrective measures to deal with it. So the way in which, if you look at a place like Guyana, the way in which people solve a lot of the homicides is, we've seen it in families. I mean, I just saw this morning in the newspaper, 4 brothers attack a man and broadside him with cutlasses. And we've seen a lot of that kind of violence. We in the interior, where there is gold mining and so forth, and where there is not much police presence, where there's a lot of traffic across the border from Venezuela and Colombia. Our interior is like the Wild West. And you see an uptake in violence there, where people are simply taking the law into their own hands and feeling that violent ways of conflict resolution is the accepted way. And I think it has to do with the way in which we value lives in our region. There is not a high value that is put on the lives of especially ordinary people. And ordinary people, in a sense, enact that in their daily lives, that lives don't really matter. And I think it's the value system in our region that we have to take into consideration. Do we value lives? And if we value lives as a culture, then we will find non-violent ways of settling disputes. And I go back to the state. The state itself settle problems via violence. The police come onto the scene if there is a political demonstration, and its first resort is a resort to force, a resort to violence. And then people respond to the police in violent ways, and the violence continues to multiply. So I think at every level of the society, from the state to the people themselves, the value of life in our region is really something that we have to begin to tackle the problems from. And I think it goes back to the very violent nature of our society, beginning from the transatlantic slave trade right through slavery to the present.
Right, tell you what, it's now 7:33 in Antigua and Barbuda. This is your wake-up call presented by Twin Island Media on 94.1 FM. We will have more wake-up call after this.
Have a small business and need a cash injection? Want to start a small business but short on startup capital? If you answered yes to any of those questions, then the Eastern Caribbean Amalgamated Bank's Kickstart loan is just what you need. With ECAB's Kickstart, micro, small, and medium businesses can borrow for startup, working capital, or expansion at a low interest rate and attractive terms through the Eastern Caribbean Partial Credit Guarantee Corporation. So don't wait any longer. Let's kickstart your business today. Call us at 480-6051 or 480-1624 or check us on Facebook, Instagram, or ecabank.com. ECAB means business. The Eastern Caribbean Amalgamated Bank. All future, all bank.
Automotive art is a place to start. Automotive art is a place to start.
Yeah, look, check. We got a wide range of products that are automotive and do-it-yourself supplies if you got a moment. Smart staff that'll always know it. Got rims and tires from trucks to high performance to off-road. Start hair tools, batteries, oil, and car care.
Fight fraud and guard your finances with these anti-fraud protection tips from the Antigua Barbuda Montserrat Bankers Association. Protect your passwords and PINs. Ignore emails asking for personal info. Be cautious with file downloads. Copy and verify links before clicking. Avoid public Wi-Fi connections. And remember, contact your bank if something seems suspicious. This message was brought to you by the Antigua-Barbuda Montserrat Bankers Association. Stay connected to your local banks for more information on fighting fraud.
It's 7:35 in Antigua and Barbuda. This is your wake-up call presented by Twin Island Media on 94.1 FM. We're continuing our discussion with Dr. David Hinds from the People's Cooperative Republic of Guyana and Jermaine Abel, who's a journalist based in St. Kitts Nevis, the Federation of St. Kitts Nevis, to give it its full title and proper title. Or is it St. Christopher Nevis, Jermaine? We still say St. Christopher?
It still says St. Christopher.
Okay. All right. Are there some areas in St. Kitts that are plagued with violence than others, or more violence than others? I mean, when things happen, do they tend to be certain areas as opposed to others?
There used to be that, but there's still, the police will tell you they're still targeting quote-unquote hotspot areas. But generally, the problem persists around the entire federation. I can say, for example, I know, and people, my friends in that area are going to, fret with me, but Keon, for example, used to be described as a hotspot area where the folks from the quote-unquote bad guys from the upper part could not integrate with the guys in the lower area and vice versa. McKnight was one of those areas, and even now they're flagging them, but the criminal activities are occurring right across the federation. But I think just to give a quick context, what I found, Darren and others, is that people are not necessarily targeting law-abiding citizens. When you hear, for example, we have 19 homicides this year, which is more than the last 3 years. It's a case where I would have infringed on someone or I would have done someone something. So it's more of a retribution type issue that is occurring in St. Kitts and Nevis. And I have to give that sort of context so people can get a better understanding. So it's not a case that somebody's been specifically singled out because they didn't do something. Right, it's more of me getting back at you, sort of issue that's been occurring here in St. Kitts and Nevis.
A simple matter of poverty. So some suggest, the Caribbean is not providing enough opportunity, particularly for its young persons, and they feel they want to get ahead in life. They want to drive the BMW and the Mercedes. They want to live in the house on the hill. And they're going to do whatever it takes. And so, if violence comes with it, so be it. Is it as simple as that for some? Dr. David Hinds.
Well, that is a fact. But I don't think it's the only reason. I mean, poverty is, of course, at the core of a lot of our social problems in Guyana and the region. We know that for a fact. But to say that there is a causation between poverty and every act of violence is really to simplify it. Poverty has to be seen in that context. But there are other factors. You take a place like Guyana or Trinidad, we are right there at the gateway to the drug problems starting in Central America and South America. So we are transshipment points. And then you come through a Guyana and a Trinidad, and then you get in to our small islands. Their islands, it's very easy to penetrate their borders because they're islands. They don't have the kind of resources to fight the transnational crime. Because we in the Caribbean are right there in the root of transnational crime. And then you take Guyana and Trinidad, a lot of money, A lot of money passes through those countries, legitimate money, but a lot of bad money is there in those countries. And so therefore, it's very difficult to distinguish between the formal economy and the narco economy. And the narco economy feeds on poverty. It feeds on poverty. The young people who are running drugs are often young people who are looking to make a living and are not able to make a living in the formal society. You take a place like Guyana, 50% of its people are earning $7 per day or less. You hear that? And this is in the fastest growing economy in our region, in our hemisphere, and perhaps in the world. 50% of its people. Young people then look at that and say, I really can't make a living in the formal economy. And so I go outside of the formal economy. Once you go outside there, that's the law of the jungle. That's the concrete jungle there, right? And so violence then there. No, the police force itself, no, it's recruiting its members from the very communities that are caught up in this violence. So at some point you can't distinguish between who is the police and who are the violent quote-unquote criminals because they are coordination. And we have seen that in Guyana. Coordination in crime between police and the quote-unquote young people who are getting into these behaviors. So the thing becomes a kind of inbreeding and renders the state institutions incapable of putting in place preventative measures and corrective measures. So it becomes a problem that is driven from outside, percolating inside of the country. The institutions of the country are not matured enough. They are corrupt to deal with it. We are really dealing with a state of emergency in our region. And given the way in which people are moving from island to island, and I'm calling places like Guyana here an island. We are not physically an island, but we are an island nation. And the way in which our people are now able to move from island to island, when Trinidad and Guyana, when there's a spike, it's easy to see how you see a similar spike in St. Lucia or St. Kitts. So it's really a wider problem that is not confined to a given country or a given region in a country, but it's really a regional problem that has to be tackled regionally.
We're gonna have to wrap this discussion up now, but I want to share with you quite a timely post. And this comes on the heels of reports of another shooting incident last night. That's in addition to all that I just chronicled in the prelude to this discussion. I think there was a shooting in Clarks Hill. I don't believe that the person has died. At least I haven't received any reports of anyone dying, but the person is in hospital and, individuals are waiting to see. But this, one of our top social media influencers posted this morning, about 57 minutes ago, guns aren't manufactured here. Guns aren't sold here, legally that is. It's illegal to import guns, yet they're here in abundance. Did the laws change? Who is bringing them in? Who is looking the other way? And I think those are some very important questions that I suspect all of us, are going to have to contend with as we seek to arrest this very significant scourge that all our societies are facing, unfortunately. All right. Dr. David HINDS, Jermaine Abel, thank you so much once again for joining us this morning on Wake Up Call. Always great to have both of you.
Thank you. Thank you very much, my brother.
Good to be on, guys.
Yeah, man. All right, it's now 7:44. That means it's just about time for our second news top-up. We certainly hope that that individual recovers and that they don't succumb to whatever injury they may have sustained. And I'm also getting video of some incident that happened at a business place not too far from, good grief, Lord of mercy. Anyway, it's now time for our second news top-up here on Twin Island Media's Wake Up Call.
Up with Kieran Murdoch. News in your interest.
7:45 a.m. in Antigua and Barbuda. This is your news top-up. My name is Kieran Murdoch. Loop News reports that in Guyana, 2 years after he was ordered to pay $20 million in a default judgment, Vice President of that country, Bara Jagbeo, has lost his latest appeal to evade paying the award to former government minister Annette Ferguson, whom he had defamed in 2019. The Court of Appeal has dismissed a notice for special leave filed by Jagbeo to challenge the full court's decision, which upheld a High Court ruling that Ferguson be awarded a default judgment. Loop also reports that Bermuda has implemented several new regulations to protect the territory's lobster population. During the lobster season, which traditionally runs from September the 1st through March 31st in that country, the territory's 22 currently licensed spiny lobster fishermen will be allowed to set 8 traps per license, and there is an individual catch limit of 600 lobsters for the season. The Point Express here in Antigua and Barbuda reports that the 33-year-old Brigands man who was nursing gunshot wounds at the Celestibird Medical Center has been released. Chet Lewis was shot multiple times outside his Brigands home on August 21st. A gunman opened fire, calling him outside the residence. Daily Observer reports that the mother of the man who was shot by police recently said that the force needs better training to deal with persons suffering from mental health incidents. After hearing that her son, Roshan Shabazz, had been shot by police and taken to hospital, Josette Joseph said she experienced shock, frustration, but a sense of familiarity as she recalled her son's battle with mental issues. Her son, who is 33 years old, was shot by police officers last week during an altercation in town where he was seen carrying a knife and allegedly throwing projectiles at bystanders. She believes the police should have alternative tools to defuse situations involving individuals having mental health challenges. CMC reports that the proliferation of ghost guns in Antigua and Barbuda, these guns created using readily available 3D printing technology, presents a significant challenge for law enforcement. That's according to Deputy Commissioner of Police Everton Jeffers, who recently disclosed the discovery of at least 2 of these 9mm small firearms, saying it was deeply concerning due to their untraceable nature. Ghost guns lack serial numbers, making it nearly impossible for law enforcement to trace their origins or owners. The Daily Observer again reports that disgraced local finance watchdog Leroy King has been sanctioned formally by the U.S. Securities and Exchange Commission, that's the SEC, over admissions he made during a criminal trial related to the Ponzi scheme run by Alan Stanford. King, who is 76 years old, is barred from association with any broker, dealer, or investment advisor. The National Hurricane Center in the United States says that Tropical Storm Lee is rapidly intensifying and is poised to become an extremely dangerous hurricane by the weekend, with maximum sustained winds of 45 miles per hour and a north.
Morning. Welcome again. It is now 7 hours 48. 12 minutes to the 8 o'clock hour. Dr. Hines is with us. We got short time by. I guess we can start today and perhaps continue gaffing tomorrow about these issues. But welcome to the program, Dr. Hines. I saw you were over there on 94.1 FM.
Yes. Island hopping, as they say, it's the nature of the work. And, when you get an opportunity to deal with these trans-Caribbean or pan-Caribbean issues, it allows you a scope to really put our situation in Guyana in its larger context. So I welcome doing the Caribbean-wide programs and also to get a chance to talk about what's happening in Guyana to the wider Caribbean, because often they are fed out there the kind of official version of what's happening in Guyana. So when we get the opportunity to speak to a larger Caribbean audience and to put Guyana within its larger Caribbean context, I think it helps our own struggle here in Guyana.
Yes, indeed. And it's also beneficial in my mind when we get to carry those programs, because then we get to hear the perspective of others around the region, not only on what is the same situations in their territories, but also by extension you get to do a comparison of what's happening in Guyana versus those territories. So it's always good when we get to carry those discussions. I mean, there are many people who might say, why we're not with the regular programming? But things can always be regular. Right? Interesting perspectives over there indeed. But crime is the big man down here. Crime is a big man and will remain a big man. Let me tell you something that I learned over the last weekend. Jam Zone weekend. I understand it is alleged that the son of the current man acting as commissioner of police was stopped with narcotics. Right? A motorcyclist, he was motorcycling along with somebody else and he was stopped in narcotics. Well, let me call the thing by the right name because I know if all of them can fall in the same bracket. Ganja, marijuana. He was caught, he had a quantity of marijuana. And instead of the police being allowed to do their work, what happens? Just like we're saying happens in official, in the official corridors of power. There are different laws to different people. I understand the commissioner called the policemen, went and abused them verbally, threatened them with transfers, among other things. How then do you deal with crime if the police force has to be partial? If it's the commissioner's son or somebody with connections to the commission and so on, you dare not touch them. But one of the things I heard just now on the program as interesting is guns are no longer necessarily imported into these islands. They're printed 3D. Right? The 3D printing technology is used to print guns without serial numbers and so on. Years ago, we might have thought that 3D printing is some stupidness we're talking about. But here it is in our region, and to some extent wreaking havoc. I don't think the police departments and so on are really prepared for that because many of us are lagging technologically. Good? So I just wanted to say that. But our clients, we have bigger things to talk about, man. Or, well, not bigger things. We have our own local issues that we deal with on a regular here in the country. I see Jack Yoga pay Annette 20 million. At least there's another ruling that says why you gonna pay the $20 million, you can't run from it. I guess he might be running to the CCJ to prevent pain. What do you think?
Yes, he has already indicated that they're going to the CCJ. I read that overnight in the media. So he is going to the CCJ.
I expected it. I didn't have to read it. You know, let me offer a little analysis on that. You know, in my mind, it will cost more than $20 million, right? To fight this case from the lower courts all the way to the CCJ. It will cost Jack Deere more than $20 million. My guess is. So why fight tooth and nail against this $20 million judgment when in actuality it is going to cost you more to fight it? And then if you have to pay it, it's like you're paying more than double. Why this determination not to pay?
Well, first of all, these people are rich people, so they can fight those cases. And I suppose it's difficult to distinguish whether it's state money or it's personal money that is being used to fight a case like that. The second thing is he's a political person. And so his personal problems are wrapped up with the problems of the government and the state. And so there is a really indistinguishable factor here that is not easy to distinguish between the personal and the political in this case. These people manage the state of Guyana as their personal fiefdom, their personal property. And so, therefore, what happens to them personally, if they lose a case personally, they will see it as the political party, the government, and the state losing. And so because there is that nexus between the personal, the ownership, if you will, of the government and the state, you find that these matters take on the wings that they've taken up. This is not just Jack Dio losing to Annette. This is about the PPP losing to the PNC, the PPP losing to the opposition. It's all wrapped up in the political motion of the country.
And so at no point can the PPP be seen as losing to the PNC or to.
But this is the PPP's political practice.
Quite interesting. A small man like me would just weigh the pros and cons as against 20 million plus legal fees and so on, and perhaps just go to pocket and bring that thing to an end. But it's interesting how we fight in this country. We are talking about fighting and the approach of the PPP to governance and politics in this country. Last week when we were talking, we intended to talk about, I would say, the distribution of power, the management of power in the society, the majority rule that we're faced with. We wanted to talk about the issue of the supermajority and so on. In the same light of that discourse, we are hearing, or we heard, hint throwing, let me call it that, of the PPP wanting to talk with certain people, political persons, political parties, about the possibility of power sharing. But Nigel Hughes at the Coffee 250 State of African Guyanese discourse, the 10th annual, suggested that, you know, the way to deal with this disparity, the mistreatment, the constant political fights in the management of the country's resources and so on, was to have, I think, a supermajority in Parliament, a vote that will have to include members of the opposition. Jagdeo attacked it, Anil attacked it. Where are we heading? Sarah Lynch said in the Sarah Lynch recent interview, she had a lot to say in terms of where the country is heading, what are some of the things that she believes needs to be in place, and stuff like that. What is your total view on the positions of Nigel Hughes and the response of the PPP?
Well, Brother Kadaki, if you look at the history of this program, for example, I've been coming here for the last 3 years, and I've been saying that the manner in which the PPP came to office has a logic to it. And the logic it has is a logic that leads the country into a one-party authoritarian state. Because if you bring a government to power in a disputed election and you paint one participant as thieves, the participant that you give the power will see themselves as having a total mandate. Because in effect, what happens in regime change is that the regime, the government that you marginalize from office is seen as a disgrace. And so therefore the party that is given the power may have 50.2% of the vote, but it feels that it has a 100% mandate. And I've been drumming that ear every time I come to say regime change has consequences. In effect, what I'm saying, that if you look over the last 3 years, you would see the rapid evolution of an authoritarian state. So the party that is governing the state believes that it has a legitimate hold on power. Anil Nandalal, during the 2020 impasse, said this is a struggle of good over evil. So the PPP is good, the opposition is evil. And so if the PPP is good and the opposition is evil. The PPP has more than a political right to govern. It sees its right to govern as God-given right. It is good. It is good over evil. So there is a political logic. There is a logic of self-perception. And it means, therefore, that you are going to see the developments. I have been saying on this program, the PPP has monopolized every inch of political space. And sometimes I know I tire the listeners. I know sometimes I give the impression as though all is lost, because I am painting what is it that we have to wrap our minds around. So, no. Here is the PPP. The Americans that helped to put them in power. The Americans that intervene at the level of the president, at the level of the Secretary of State. This is the greatest country on earth that is intervening in the politics of a small country, not at the level of the undersecretary, at the level of the presidency and the Secretary of State. You understand what I'm saying here? And the PPP is the beneficiary of that. It's the beneficiary of that. And here is the ambassador, who was the American point person, who would have an intimate knowledge of the machinations that brought the PPP to power. Here she is saying to the PPP, look, at the end of the day, regardless of what happened, you all got to make this country work, right? And you all got to talk. In effect, what she's saying is, look, we may have helped to bring you to power and to keep the other side out of power. But that was based on making sure that our interests are taken care of. So we took care of our interests by putting you in power. Now we are saying to you, in the interest of your country, you got to talk to these people. And the PPP answers by saying, no, you now can't tell us who to talk to. You now can't tell us talk to the opposition. Remember, Mr. America, you marginalized the opposition from power. You helped to do that. You call Granger and Halapony. You put sanctions on them. How can you now tell us to talk to them? You all hear me out here this morning. This is what's going on here. Now the Americans would see regime change not as an end in itself. They see regime change as a means to an end. Regime change to them is about making sure their interests, their economic and geopolitical interests are taken care of. All right? And the PPP sees the regime change as an end in itself. That is the end of history for Guyana. That the PPP is in power, it has a right to be in power, and it's not going to talk to no opposition. No. What happened in 2020, therefore, is the convergence of American and Western interests merging or converging with the PPP's own sense of its historical ownership of Guyana. The PPP always feels that it is the party that was ordained by God to govern Guyana. And so therefore it took the opportunity of regime change by the West, which, like I said, was a means to an end. The PPP then takes the opportunity to take advantage of that, to put itself firmly in power, and to see that as an end in itself. This is what it always should have been. We should have been in power because we are good, and the other side is evil. And so your regime change plays into our narrative of ourselves. So now that regime change has happened, you've looked after your interests. You, Mr. America, you are now saying, in pursuit of our interests going forward, we're asking the two of you all now to talk. And I am saying to you, oh no, I'm not going to talk. So here is the PPP benefiting from the American action, and then it's now telling the Americans, no, you can't tell us what to do now. Thanks for what you did for us in 2020, but now we running the show here, and so therefore you can't tell us what to do. They did the same thing in 1992. Carter came down, and he helped them to get into power, and then by 10 years later, 12 years later, Carter left Guyana and said he's done with this country. Because the PPP basically, when he told the PPP, it's now time for power sharing, they tell him the same thing they're now telling Cyril Lynch. So the Americans have not learned that there is a way in which your interests, your national interests, help to create a monster in countries like Guyana. Your national interest pushes you to put the PPP in power. But you're putting a party in power that is based on the ideology of domination. And so when you are saying, no, having got into power, now it's time to cool out and to pivot, they are not going to pivot because they believe in the ideology of domination. And so the Americans have created a problem for themselves. And I know many people out there would say, well, you know, nobody talks to the American in certain ways and so on. You all are not paying attention to history. The Americans did the same thing. The Americans put the PNC in power in 1964. And later on, when they tried to tell Burnham, behave yourself, Burnham tell them, well, if you throw me out in office, look what you got to deal with. You got to deal with the communist PPP. And the Americans had to buy their time until the end of the Cold War. And so we've seen history repeating itself, where there is a clash between the Americans need to ensure its national interest is served, whether ideological, and later on, with the authoritarian instincts, need to ensure. And so therefore, this is what we've seen playing out here. It is no accident that just as the PPP is telling the Americans where to get off, they're telling Nigel Hughes, who they see as an agent of the opposition, putting forward a reasonable proposal. He's saying the same thing the Americans are saying. Let us find an inclusive form of government. And they went off at him. Oh no, oh no, oh no. Because remember, Nigel Hughes represents evil. And we cannot cooperate with evil. And so what we are seeing here in Guyana is what I and others have been warning you all about. If you start from the premise, that there was regime change in 2020, the logic of regime change takes us where we are now. A government that sees itself as larger than the Constitution, larger than political norms, larger than accepted norms in countries with the rule of law. They see themselves as a law unto themselves. And so therefore react in the way they react. And they would feel confident enough to say to the Americans, because to say to the Americans, no, we're not going to talk. Don't tell us. We don't want you to mediate for any time. They will feel that the Americans do not have an alternative, that the Americans wouldn't turn to the opposition as an alternative to them. I'm sure they feel confident about that. So that's one. The second thing, they feel that they have enough state resources, right, to manipulate the society in a way to say to the Americans, look, we have this thing under control. Why are you panicking that the society would disintegrate if we don't talk? Look, we have not been talking for 3 years. And look what has happened. We are controlling the upper echelons of the army and the police. We are controlling the parliament. We are controlling the media. We have it under control. What are you all talking about, Mr. America? There is no crisis here. It's just a few opposition people running around and saying there is a problem, there's apartheid, and all we have to do is to charge them, pull them before the courts, put some shackles on their feet, and everything is back to normal. So that is what we are seeing, my brothers and sisters. The logic of regime change takes us here. America makes this mistake everywhere it goes. It takes care of its national interests and not taking into consideration what it could be creating in the society. And once again, it has made that mistake in Guyana. It made that mistake in other parts of the world, that it engaged in regime change. And it has made that mistake here. So, if America wants to get the PPP out of office tomorrow, it can do the PPP just as it did to the coalition. But it's not in American interest to get the PPP out of office yet. And so therefore, they're trying to then cajole the PPP. And the PPP, I think, has read the situation. And they know that America is not going to push the envelope to the point of pushing them out of office, or at least so they think. And so therefore, they're taking the stance that they are taking. We are living in interesting times.
Sometimes you speak of the US continuously making this mistake wherever they go. Is it a mistake or is it a calculated risk? As they say, it's just collateral damage. Because once the US interest gets served, then
well, yes. When I say it's a mistake, I mean from our standpoint, from countries like ours, internally, it's a mistake the way they act. But for them, you're right. It's not a mistake. They look after their interests. But in looking after their interests, they are messing up the internal dynamics of a country. They are foisting one of the consequences of regime change is the consolidation of the authoritarian state. Because the party in power feels that it has the blessings of the greatest country in the world. It is also being driven, like I said, by its own instinct of its feeling that it must dominate the country. So when you put the two things together, that I have the blessings of the greatest country in the world, and then my domination instinct, you are bound to move to an authoritarian state. Now look at the way things are beginning to play out there at Barbies with the sugar workers. The first time in a critical mass of Indian Guyanese are taking the risk of going against at least the initial wishes of the PPP. I say initial because I think the PPP going to patch up that story with those sugar workers very quickly, right? But the first time that a group of their own supporters decide that they're going to behave like opposition people and come onto the streets, they put the police on them. Now, the police was quite cautious with those sugar workers. They didn't tear gas them, they didn't do all the things that they would do to black people. They didn't kneel on people's back and neck and so on. But they acted against the people. So I'm saying the contradictions of the authoritarian state, and this is Indian Guyanese, I think, have to learn this lesson. The contradictions of the authoritarian state means that you build up an authoritarian state for your opponents, who you see as enemies. But that authoritarian state you're going to use against your very own, if they only show signs of opposing your right to make decisions for them and your right to govern the state with an iron fist. So, not to Nigerians, no to the Americans, and no to the sugar workers, their own supporters. Authoritarianism, dictatorship has a logic of its own, that it eventually consumes the entire society.
Yeah, many were arguing that the action on the sugar workers was only taken because Ramjatan was emerging as a leader.
But don't say only. Don't say only. To say only is to minimize it. That Ramjatan could go there among those sugar workers and give them leadership points to something in human relations, in political relations that the PPP, like any authoritarian government, don't understand. They believe people are robots, you know? You hear what they're saying? Oh, Ramjatan should be the last person to go to sugar workers. Those sugar workers know damn well that what Ramjatan and the coalition were trying to do was in their best interest. They were trying to stabilize an industry that was out of control. Those sugar workers know that. They know that ultimately the right sizing of the sugar industry would be to their benefit. They know that. But for political reasons, they allow themselves to be used by the PPP as part of regime change. And now they are acting as labor always, or labor should act. And that is, they are acting within the context of the demand of labor from capital. And so therefore, in doing that, they will seek leadership from wherever it comes from, hence Ramjatan. Because they knew that Ramjatan was not their enemy in the first place. They knew that. So it's not surprising that Ramjatan would go to them and he would give leadership. It's the same thing they said about us. They said, don't worry with WPA and Kadaki, Amsterdam, and David Hines. They don't represent nobody. And then when we come on programs like these and we're talking to hundreds of people and thousands of people, they then say, you know what, tell the universities to knock off Westmos and Hines. They know. They know. But they come to believe their own lies. So they have to act in that way when they see Ramjatan going among those workers and give them. It doesn't surprise me, because I knew that those workers always knew that what the previous government was attempting to do was in their ultimate best interest. And so the government is surprised that Ramjatan could do. It means they don't understand their own supporters. So they're not only acting, they are acting because it's a big deal what Ramjatan is doing.
The argument is also, I mean, you are saying they're supporters. The argument is that these people are not necessarily the PPP supporters because the protesters, the group of protesters were perhaps more than 50% African Guyanese.
Look, let's don't split hairs. Let's don't split hairs. There may be 50, those who are protesting are 50% African Guyanese, but the sugar workers and workforce is not 50% African Guyanese. I mean, we get off with these things sometimes. I don't know. I understand, you know. Black people are not half of sugar workers. They may be half of the people on the streets. But the action against the people on the street is not just the protesters. It's an action against sugar workers themselves. And the majority of sugar workers are their supporters.
Very well. In the same light of the discourse with Sarah Lynch, the interview with Sarah Lynch, Sarah says, listen, Guyanese must do everything that is necessary to ensure free, fair, and credible elections. And we must not wait until the 11th hour to attempt to implement these things because implementation takes time. And so we ought to be addressing them with adequate time. Is it a message to the opposition to up the ante, or is it just Sarah blowing hot and cold?
That may be one way to read it, but the real way to read what she's saying, you can't fix something that is not broken. Sarah Lynch and others said that the elections in 2020 were free and fair. And now they're saying you have to fix it before the next election. They know damn well that the elections in 2020 were not free and fair. That's what they're saying. That's what the lady's saying. She's saying that elections are not free and fair. We got work to do to make it free and fair. That, for me, is the larger message. It's an admission that we have a broken electoral system. The Americans knew that. But it is within their interest to say the 2020 elections, well, let me take back, they said the 2020 elections were disputed. To be too fair to them, they say that. They just said that the local government elections were free and fair. Right? But she is admitting that elections in Guyana are based on a broken electoral system, that the electoral architecture cannot throw up free and fair elections. She's contradicting herself. She just said the local government election is free and fair, and she's now saying that for free and fair elections to happen, you have to get things done before the elections. Now, how can the local government election be free and fair with a system that can't throw up free and fair elections? But that's Americans' contradictions. That's American diplomacy, all right? But the big story is that the Americans are admitting that the conditions for free and fair elections in Guyana are not there. And they are, in a sense, agreeing, justifying our argument that the elections of 2020 were not free and fair.
And the fix?
Well, yes.
One of the things we continuously have been calling for is the biometrics and the clean voters list. So that just that viewers are reminded that that's part of the fix. The question is whether or not the current administration is interested. Has there been any indication? Are you seeing any light at the end of the tunnel that these things will be accepted, Dr. Hines?
The PPP will only accept those things if they're able to manipulate them. They will agree to biometrics if they find a way to manipulate the biometrics. They will agree to it. Their whole thing is that we want an architecture that can be manipulated. So if there is a way of getting a clean voters list and then manipulate the clean voters list, we will agree to it. If there's a way to agree to biometrics and manipulate biometrics, we will agree to it. Because you can get biometrics and a clean voters list. But if you get your people there to manipulate that architecture, then you can still win. So the PPP hasn't found a way yet to have a cleaner voters list and biometrics and still find ways and means of manipulating. You know, you can fix something with biometrics. You can fix something with a voters list, but you can find other ways of manipulating the election. Once the PPP find other ways of manipulating the election and they figure out how to win, how to manipulate and win, even with biometrics and voters list, they will agree to biometrics and voters list. Until such time, they're not.
$7,000 increase on the pensions by 2025. And I think the school grant is going to go up to $40,000. How do you react to such a bold statement? That in 2
Political
years' time
propaganda.
we will give you $35 on
Political propaganda, and it means that you and I have more work to do. You see, when you beat people down, and then you give them a little something, they say, thank God for small mercy. There's that tendency in our population, especially among poor people, that thank God for small mercies. Don't underestimate it. Do not underestimate it. It's a very strong current in our culture. Thank God for small mercies. We have to do our work to convince the population that it is not even small mercies what they're giving you. We are in a war for the minds of our people. The government is hiring academics, the Freddie Kissoons and the Randolph Possads and them. They are coercing the media because they want to bamboozle the minds of people. And we have to defend the people against that. So our work has to be intensified. We have to show that that small mercy is not really small mercy. It's no mercy. And we are coming up against a very oiled political party and government that is prepared to use the institutions of the state and other extra state institutions, extra governmental institutions, to use its propaganda to manipulate the minds of people. Our work has to be done. That is why I always say to our people, you all stop this nonsense that we talking too much. You all better thank God we talking. Because in the process of talking, we are clarifying and we are pushing back against the government mind games. $7,000, you are playing mind games with people. But you are playing on that instinct among our people to accept small mercies. So we got to continue to quote unquote talk. Because in the process of talking, we are defending our people. You see, last night, the spirit moved in me on Politics 101. After my guest left, I spent probably another half an hour, 45 minutes going into some African history. And there's a reason I was doing that. Because I was trying to get to our people that this twinning of indentureship and slavery is a dangerous thing. It is playing on the minds of our people. And lo and behold, in today's paper, Vishnu Bishram comes out in a letter and said, Indian people experience chattel slavery. So They're not satisfied in saying internship is the same as slavery. We are beating that back. So they're now saying that Indian people were chattel. I sensed they were going there. Hence, that's why I went off on the angle that I went off last night. And to show black people that before they came to the New World, black people were enslaved in what is now India and Pakistan and Turkey and the Middle East. There's a reason. Those who heard me last night, when you read Bishram today, you will understand why I was going there. So that our brothers and sisters who came after slavery already came from a culture that was anti-black at its core. You got to be in front of these people. You got to see where they're going. Their objective in twinning the sufferings of our people is to do exactly what the president was attempting to do when he said all of us came here for the good life. Of course, he knows that all of us didn't come here looking for opportunities. But what he was trying to do is to say there's no differentiation in our demands of the state. And that's what they're after. They're trying to say Africans must not have more demands on the states. To do that is to then legitimize the African cries against discrimination. We are not discriminating, all of us suffer together. So you should not make more demands than me. All of it is geared towards that. So now Bishram comes today and said that Indian people underwent chattel slavery. They're inventing history now. You all see why we have to talk. What you all call talk, I know it's more than talk. Anyhow, are we there for now? Coming along, people are making contributions. And so the fund is coming along. And thank those who've been making contributions. And we have to keep reminding our people on a regular basis. But yes, it's encouraging. We are moving along. I can't give a definitive number now, but we are moving along steadily.
Hi, good morning, Kadaki. Hi, good morning, Kadaki. Good morning, Dr. Hinds. Dr. Hinds, with respect to your program last evening, I was pleased to hear GHK Lal address the issue with respect to Indians living here in the United States. A lot of Indians from Guyana do not realize that it is the black civil rights movement here in the United States that kicked the door open for those ungrateful people to come. It is the black civil rights movement here in America that kicked the door open for them. Nevertheless, the question that I have is the churches held slaves. Major universities held slaves. How are we going to address this issue? We have some in Guyana who say, I am an Anglican or I am a Catholic, not realizing that the same body that they are in were major slaveholders in Guyana. How do we address this?
One has to be very careful when we are dealing with people's religious affiliation. I am not always happy in the way in which the conversation from our side on these matters are done. I don't say much on it because you raise the fundamental thing there. How do you say to somebody in the Seventh-day Adventist Church or any Christian church that historically held slaves, but these people belong to that church? And so one has to find a way to differentiate between the sordid history of the church and the contemporary church. I think we fold the two together. And I think that is always a mistake. You know, people belong to those churches. And in their head, they do not belong to a church that held slaves. So in their head, they're making a differentiation between the church that held slaves and the church that helped rebellion, such as the Congregational Church. All right? And so we have to be very careful when we are having that discourse with people. You can't have the discourse in a way of turning people off by telling them you shouldn't be in that church because they held slaves. My approach is always to, first of all, talk about the African influence on early Christianity. And last night I got into some of that. If you look at the Old Testament, you will see that Africans made tremendous contribution to early Christianity, to the early Islam. Islam and Christianity became anti-Black over a period of time. And then with the Great Awakening in the 18th century, the 19th century, the Great Awakening, where you had some of these revivalist churches began to accept Black people to worship in their churches. And the role that some of these churches played in the anti-slavery movement, one has to talk about the role of religion and the role of the church in more nuanced ways. Because it's not a straightforward problem, it's a nuanced problem. The Black Americans create what they call Black Christianity. They broke with the African church and the Methodist church, Reverend Allen in Philadelphia, and they formed the African Methodist Episcopal Church. It was a breakaway from the Methodist Church and the English Church or Episcopal Church or the Church of England. So one cannot talk about Christianity as a monolith. The Rastafarians adhere to the Christian Bible, but they're more Old Testament people. Blacks choose the parts of the Bible that they emphasize. Revelation. Black people are big on Revelation. You see? So we have to talk about religion and church in more nuanced ways. We always run the risk of throwing the baby out with the bathwater and in many regards throwing out our own contribution in humanizing these institutions. African people have humanized Islam. They've humanized Christianity. And we cannot throw away our contributions to the humanist wing of those religions and churches. So I think we have to be very nuanced. You know, Dr. King used to tell a story of getting calls late at night with Christians threatening to kill him. threatened to murder him. And he said one night he got this call. And he went outside, he lit a cigarette, and he began to meditate. And he said he heard a voice that said, Martin, you have to get back to the church of your grandfather and your great-grandfather, your church of your father, your great-grandfather. He was somebody black church. Because remember, King studied in Boston, University of Boston. He studied Universalist European Christianity. But when European Christians are calling him and telling him they will kill him because he's talking about black civil rights, he said, I then had to retreat to the God and the church of my father and my great-grandfather. He was somebody black church. So we have to make that distinction, brothers and sisters, of the European Eurocentric church that was part and parcel of the denigration and oppression and killing of black people. And the church of our grandfather, our great-grandfathers, which was the black Christian instinct that pushed back against the European instinct in the church. And that would have led the Congregational Church in Guyana to play the role it played in the 1823 rebellion or revolution. And then the role it played after emancipation. You can't say the Congregational Church of 1823 is the same as the Congregational Church that may have aided and abetted slavery. So we have to be much more nuanced in our discourses on these issues.
Now I think I heard it where Annette and this money with Barrett. Now the other day the wind seeds said that all the people who got money for the government will have to levy on them. Well, in the same light, Annette should be levying on Barrett. Now, when you talk about the CCJ, we should all understand, people should understand that the CCJ is a court that is being bought and paid for with ExxonMobil money. And they have to dance to the whims and fantasies of who are paying them their monies, the piper calling the tune. Anyway, moving along. Now, Dr. Hines, I think we may follow. Because I listen to you and you talk about the up and coming election, you talk about regime change and so. I could remember a few weeks ago or days ago where Sarah Lynch was saying that we must ask for what we want for the new election. We must not wait until late to ask. Well, I think something is wrong. Probably she's going senile or she's suffering from early dementia. Because since 2020 and prior to 2020, there was a quest and a going with door-to-door registration in order to clean up this dirty voters list. She said nothing. All right, the election come and done. People are on the streets every week. First was 3 times a week. Now it's 1 time a week. Every day we're out there by GCOM, whether it's numbers, it's 2, it's 3, making our voices sounded for clean voters list, change the list, biometrics, and the works to have a proper election. Now the point where I think we may fall out is I listened to you and you said we're something to this, that they put them in the outer world, putting them, and like they think that we like to what I understand, I may be wrong, that because America put the PPP in, they may not want them to come out. America put PPP in, and America is seeing what they have done because they don't want us to link with BRICS. And Blinken was here, and I'm quite certain he spoke to the install regime. And days after Blinken left, bam, in front is in China. We do not know what he went to China for. But if I know fish catching over, sir, and I got on me church clothes, and I go over to Legwan catching fish, everybody gonna say, Randa air fish in Legwan. She put on she church clothes and she gone to Legwan to catch fish. We don't know what he went for. And let me tell you, I remember I heard it when Biden told Sarah, you make your mess, clean up your mess. And let me tell you, you live in America. I don't know nothing I know about South America. When this man, Anthony Weiner, sent his picture of his penis, and it went to this girl and he get out. And the president told him, you got to know what to do eventually. Anthony Weiner's wife used to work with Hillary Clinton. Hillary Clinton was a thing with Barack. Eventually, when I think they got down to the fullness of the destruction of Trump towards this woman, Ruth Clinton, it was an underfeed, I think, from the same man who had to leave office. That was how we got back on this campaign, the destroy Clinton thing. And eventually, a couple days before, they said Clinton the good. We all see how America, but they say, oh, Trump never expected he would have been where he is. Carell was an ambassador, whatever position, a big high position in Guyana. He went back in federal chains. We do not know what will happen. In the same watch, when Biden tells you clean up, Vice News came and check out Barra Jagdio, and now Reuters checking out the richest of the rich. And if we send messages to our people, the people, they are feeble. Africans in Guyana, many of them don't have my temperament. Because let me tell you something, nobody in pulling me. When we had this last election, the PPP told them, they had them to go to the polls with their phones, all the 10-day workers, and vote. Take out your picture and let me see you all vote for the cup to get this local government. And we have got to send the message to the voting population that you will go to the polls whenever is the general election. You will walk with your phones. You will keep your phones in your pockets. And you will vote for a government who is going to take us out of this. But if we keep sending mixed messages to people, oh, we could go, but we heard this body who are up in the people, so that is called, and we will go with our phones. We wouldn't put our phones to show who we have voted for. Because let me tell you, all of them who went and vote want to tell me, oh, all now is 160,000 and I gonna vote for PPP. The same voice of that individual would call me and say, now thing rough, because they put in the PPP and the PPP got them like real master. They stand up, call them out on Saturday to clean the place, and they stand up with the umbrella and they working cleaning trench. Oh, they are being paid. They now realize what they have done. And we got to be there as powers to let them know, you see what you all do for the local government? Don't let it happen. So we have got to send clear messages to our people. What you all do is wrong. And because we know there is a place in the sun for a proper party to rule Guyana, an African-oriented party. We will take the walk. So I beg of you, we must not send mixed signals, because when we send mixed signals, we leave our people in a state of I don't know what. You in here, you in there, you don't know what to do. So I beg of you, Dr. Hines, and all who are in authority, to send positive messages, and you will make my job much lighter. Because when you see I got, if I walk out of the street, you know where I live, it will take me about 2 hours, because everybody gonna call and say, I didn't listen to the program and I hear so. But when you give a clear, positive vibe, oh, they ain't calling me, because you know what? They understand everything that has been said. Bye-bye.
Thank you, Wanda.
Hi, good morning.
We have a couple other voice notes. Let me see if I can get them played. It's 9 minutes to the 9 o'clock hour. You're tuned to the Guyanese Morning Time. We're with Dr. Hines this morning, and we're talking about several issues. Remember to join Dr. Hines this evening for Politics 101. And of course, I'll be back here tomorrow morning with Guyanese Morning Time. Voice note. What happened to this one? The volume down? I don't know. Somebody sent me a whisper note, or something is wrong. These voice notes are very low. The voice notes are too low. I can't hear anything really. I doubt whether viewers are hearing. So, Dr. Hines, it's 8 minutes to the 9 o'clock. You want to wrap up?
Well, yeah, another program and another opportunity to share ideas and to share our views, and it underscores the importance to continue our struggle and to continue our fight to ensure that our people are not bamboozled, by helping to clarify a lot of the confusion that the PPP is trying to sow in the minds of people. And so the struggle continues. Eric Phillips is on tonight. The discussion is the Gladstone family visit, reparations, and related issues.
Okay, thank you very much. Sorry, viewers, sometimes, I'm seeing the complaints about cars and not hearing me and so on and so forth. I really try to mitigate these things. And so when I pull on my mic, sometimes I don't remember to put them back on. But I'm sure you get the context of the questions when you hear the responses from Dr. Hines. I'm sorry for those dropouts. Right, I'm sorry for those dropouts. And so it's not usually no song, Leland. It's no song from me sometimes. Good. But in the meantime, let me remind you that you should go down to the East Rhineville Market and support the brother there, T&W Harris Butcher Shop, because they have the best cuts in fresh meat. That's beef, chicken, pork, and lots more. And also come down to Club Twilight on Friday night and let's sing some karaoke. This Friday night is definitely on. Let's sing some karaoke. Those folks who attended the last Kwekwe night, they are asking for another. But sometimes you have to get these things far and wide. So I don't know when again we will get another Kwekwe night, unless the demands are really high. So if you really want to come to another Kwekwe night, you can start indicating by sending me those WhatsApp requests. But definitely Friday night we're going to have some karaoke down here at Club Twilight. Come on down. And we're working on getting that Creole Fridays off. Last Friday I encouraged you to pre-order. We were going to do Metem, but obviously nobody wanted Metem, so nobody ordered. Right? This week we are offering to do Metem again, so you can pre-order if you have an interest in Metem. Also, beginning this week, Friday again, schools are reopened, and so we are going to go right back to the feeding program for the students in the grade 6 students in one of the schools in the community. This term we're moving from that 20, the about number, we're pushing for 40. We're going to incrementally increase the numbers, right? The request from the HM is that the school has perhaps about 100 students who need that kind of assistance. But you got to test the waters constantly. You have to test the waters to see how it will work, how you will be able to deal with it, manage it. Good? And so I am not the type to just rush in. They say what? Wise men fail where fools rush in. I don't want to be considered a fool and just rush in blindly. Right? So for the first few mornings, we're going to be pushing to get comfortable with that 40 number, and then we're going to continue to increase it incrementally until we get to that point. Those of you who are contributing, or those of you who have pledged to contribute to the program, I welcome those contributions. I welcome your pledges, and let's continue to work to make our students comfortable that they can perform at the national grade 6 level. I did report that for that school where I'm partnering, where we are partnering, they had 100% passes at the national grade 6 examination this year. Not a single child went to primary top. And it's the first time in many years that they've achieved that. So I'm sure our contributions have helped in some way or other. I intend to continue to do that. Good. So join me on that journey, and let's bring our children along. We have students who have gone off to the University of Guyana. Let us wish them well. Let us keep them in our prayers. Let us keep our ears out to know where we can support them, because a lot of them are coming from single parent homes and homes that are economically struggling, and things are bad in this country. They say it's the richest nation per capita, but I can tell you things are bad. Things are getting from bad to worse. Good? Parents are feeling, imagine the cost of living keeps rising and people are not getting increase in wages and salaries. But you get a promise of $35 in 2 years' time. Hold strain. Hold strain. As we used to say, tighten your belt. I hope you don't cut through your spine. Have a good day. I'll see you tomorrow for another program of Guyanese Morning Time, when we'll continue to talk about these issues. Good?
You put in a 12-cent meatball, you was gonna lice. I gonna give you a word of advice. Get your meat out my rice.
You can get meat anywhere, but for the best cuts of chicken, beef, pork, mutton, and lots more, check out T&W Harris Butcher Shop, located in the East Rheinveld Market Meat section. Call us on 609-2049. Ask for Rastaman. T&W Harris Butcher Shop brings you the best in fresh cut meats